Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's great to have you here. Nice to see familiar faces around. So, introduction first. My name is Raul Cacciamani, and I work as an animation supervisor for Dimension Studio. Dimension Studios have been doing real-time production since 2017 and virtual production since 2020. Recently, we have partnered up with Double Negative. We've created a new division called Dynec 360, and we do, it's a virtual production division, and it's entirely operated by Dimension Studio. We operate two of the biggest LED stages in the world. One is in London, and one is in Rome. I'm from Rome, so I'm really proud of the one in Cinecittà Studio, which is a fantastic 24 times 8 LED wall with LED ceiling and rotated platform for quick sets redistribution. We also made a documentary about virtual production in Cinecittà, so if you're curious, go to the website, have a look. Let's dive into today's talk. We're going to talk about animation. I'm tempted to ask if there is any animator or previs artist in the room. Oh yeah, awesome, nice. How many of you animate at least 60% of the time in Unreal? Oh, look at that. Sweet, you can come help out here. Okay, good, better than I thought. I've been animating professionally for 20 years now, and the first 18 years I spent them in Maya, almost exclusively. The following 2 years instead, they were 100% devoted to Unreal. Now, if I compare the reliable flatness of being in Maya, the last 2 years have been like a roller coaster. Like every 4 months, you probably know the feeling feels different from the previous one, and they're most likely different from the next one. Every new Unreal release is like a new box full of toys, well, at least from the animation standpoint, but I'm sure from everyone it's the same. So that makes you really excited with where you're at now, but also look forward for this new uncharted territory where we are heading. And as an animator, when I learn a new DCC, I do feel like I'm visiting a new country, right? Where habits, customs, languages, they're completely different. The problem with this is that my perception of what is normal is highly challenged in this new territory, because suddenly I'm surrounded by habits which I consider A-B normal in a way. And that creates a lot of frustration. When I took my mom for the first time on a trip abroad, she was so stressed and frustrated that she couldn't interact with local people, that after a few days she goes like, why can't all these people just speak normal? And normal is Italian, if you don't know. The same attitude, I saw it in myself, and I see in many fellow animators when we engage with another DCC. Why do I have to do this in this way? Why can't it be normal? It's like when you learn a new language, right? Why do they have to put the verb at the end of the sentence rather than just like everyone does? That's the feeling. And it will be like this, but eventually then you start thinking directly in the new language, and you forget about that, and it just feels normal again. But to get there, we need to go through the frustration. So the idea is, why don't we just take some Maya sentences and we translate them into Unreal sentences? We take some Maya habits and we just make them become, we see how they translate into Unreal habits into this word. So that's the intention of this talk. Let's give it a try. So this was me up until 2022. As I said, this is exclusively Maya work. My interaction with Unreal up until this point was close to zero. There's only one project here that was actually made in Unreal, and it was this one. This was made, by the way, by the amazing team at Goodbye Kansas, one of the best team for cinematic game trailers. I'll let run some footage while I talk about my experience here. As animation director here, I was overlooking the whole production from mocap, motion editing, face animation, keyframing, till final delivery. And yet, my interaction with Unreal in this production was close to zero because I didn't want to have anything to do with it. As an animator, I wanted to protect my bubble, me and my teammates, where we were, and I wanted to make sure we could deliver. And the only way to do that is to disregard completely whatever new fancy tool you're bringing in. I do things the way I'm used to, I give it to you, then you do what you want with that. The result is that at the end of this production, like I said, my knowledge about Unreal was close to zero. And that brought me to some consideration. I think if we want animators not to perceive a new technology as an enemy, then we need to allow them training time. We cannot throw at them in production a new software and expect that they will fall in love with it, because they won't, and just the way I didn't, really. So like I said, this was me up until 2022. So what happened then? And why did I got into Unreal? Well, these guys called, and they asked me to incentivize and promote the adoption of Unreal among animation studios. And I was like, yeah, I love Unreal. Fake it till you make it, right? No, actually, what they did, they allow me time to learn and to grow in it. Plus, the enthusiasm of the community, of all these that we have here, did the rest. So I became strongly passionate about that. And also, of course, I was learning from a position of privilege, right? I mean, I was in the cave where the things were forged. So I had access to developer, coder, system architects, a product manager, you name it. Just click, ask something, and the answer come. You know, it's not the same for everyone, I understand. But eventually, so finally, I became relatively confident with what it meant to be in Unreal and animating Unreal. And we decided to produce a series of tutorials, which I highly recommend you can watch them if you haven't yet. Those are targeted specifically for animators. I try to make them the way I would love to find content when I work and I search for some information. I'm not a big fan of scrubbing through 30 minutes long tutorials to find the 10 seconds that give me the answer. So I try to take these 10 seconds and put them in each of these episodes. So we wanted to do, like I said, multiple episodes, very specific on topics, bite size, so that you wouldn't waste more than 2 minutes watching them, and hopefully you will step out of this with the answer you were looking for. No voiceover. So I didn't want people having to listen, just watch and learn. I'm thinking I will show you just one episode, the first one. It's a very basic about setting up preferences for animators. The reason why I'm showing you this because it will give us a pretext to go back to these preference settings later. So yeah, let's go. So that's it, 4 steps. Remember those. Like I said, we'll talk more later. So once we created that, I realized there was still a gap that needed to be filled, because those tutorials, they were giving answers to those animators who were already engaging with Unreal had started to get familiar with the tools and had questions and tried to provide them answers. But what about those animators who still haven't opened Unreal at all and are thinking they want to do that? How easy it is for them to get to the point when they can start asking themselves those questions. And I realized that it's not easy at all for a very simple reason. This is an episode I made just on a personal level, mocking my own work for Epic. I called it the episode 0 because the big problem with Unreal is that when you launch it, there's no timeline, right? And how can you even think animation if you don't see a timeline when you launch your DCC? It's enough to give hyperventilation to any animator, I guess. So that's the idea. This is the concept that brought me to the idea of creating the travel guide for brave animators. It's like it's a guide for those people who are thinking, those animators who wants to engage with Unreal, so trying to give them some knowledge that they should know before they start to open Unreal, because this is an unknown land for you. The habits and custom are really different, so before you go, start with something in your pockets, and hopefully that will lower the level of frustration for you when you're in it. So we will start to ask ourselves some questions and try to find the answers. The first very relevant question, I think, that we should ask ourselves, and if we as animators never ask that ourselves, it means that probably we have the wrong answer to that, is this one. Is an Unreal project the equivalent of a Maya file in the two languages? Now, to answer properly this question, we need to analyze what is it that Maya does in a traditional linear pipeline versus what Unreal does. So if we imagine this painting being our production, what Maya does is basically contributing to the creation of this picture by utilizing hundreds or thousands of Maya files, each of them responsible for a bigger or smaller part of this painting. Each of these files can be owned by a different user. They can be saved independently from each other, and they can have codependencies, right? What is it instead that Unreal, an Unreal project, does? It's basically this. Unreal is a beast, and what it does is swallows the whole thing in one single project. Now the picture lives inside Unreal. But how is this made? The picture is made by hundreds or thousands of Unreal assets that they can all be owned by different users. They are responsible for different parts of the picture, bigger or smaller than it is, and they can all be saved independently from one another inside the project. So I guess you already figure out what I'm getting at. This now might look familiar because very similar to this. So if we want to find the world that actually translate the concept of Maya file into the Unreal world, then I would rather say that it's an Unreal asset. Now, this has to be taken with a grain of salt, of course. It's more a parallel on the use you make of it, right? There are many differences. The most important one is probably that when you open a Maya file, you can make whatever you want of it. It can become a geometry, it can become a skeleton, a rig character, an animation. An Unreal asset, the time you create it, you have to specify exactly what you want to make out of it. You need to be very precise. Each asset has a very unique name, so you need to learn the vocabulary if you work in Unreal, because you need to be able to communicate with your fellow animators or colleagues, whoever. It's way more important than in other DCCs to know the right names of each asset, because each of them is very, very specific. Let's move on. So we said a Maya file is an Unreal asset, but what is then an Unreal project? How do I translate it into Maya language? You can't. It's one of those words that exist only in one language, and there's no way of translating it. if Maya and Unreal assets are the pieces of the puzzle that create the picture, an Unreal project is the frame. And you don't have such a thing in a traditional linear pipeline. Now, if it's true that every Maya file can be identified as an Unreal asset, what is the Unreal asset that allows me to animate? Or what is the Unreal asset that I can call my Maya animation file? Things here also come in a way that is a bit more complex than in the Maya world, because this answer needs to be broken down into two parts. The first thing you need is what we call a level. What is a level? A level is the 3D viewport. When you launch Maya, the first thing you see is a 3D viewport, right? So you need that. And because each Unreal asset is a Maya file, you need to create an Unreal asset that represents your Maya 3D viewport. And it's called a level. When you launch Unreal, you will see a 3D environment, and that is just the default main level. But you can have hundreds or thousands of those in your Unreal project. So don't be tricked thinking that this is the one 3D view I have there, because that's just the frame. Inside that, you're going to have so many 3D spaces that you can play with. When we do linear content production, you can think of a level as the movie set where you're shooting your movie. It's where you have everything that needs to end up in camera. You have actors, you have props, you have the set, you have lights, VFX, everything is in there. And it's represented by Unreal assets, Maya files, right? And when you drop an Unreal asset into a level, it takes the name of actor, right? Actors is everything you can animate. And they will show up in your outliner. It's called like in Maya. But remember, this outliner is only showing you things which are in this level. If inside the same project you open another level, that list will change because you are opening another Maya file. Now, if you work on a TV series, for instance, and you can take advantage of the capacity on Unreal of dealing with huge sets. You could even create just one huge level that has the whole city where every episode takes place, and maybe there is the school where the characters go every day, there's the apartment, the houses where they live, the playground, and then you can approach it like a live action production. You can do set scouting in the city and see where can we set this special sequences for this episode, and so on. So this gives us everything we need to start animate, but there is still something, as you can see, there is missing. There is no timeline here yet. And we need part two of this answer, which is the level sequence. When you create the level sequence, finally, you will see a timeline. And then you can start breathing. It's like, okay, now I feel at home. You can have like a graph editor and everything. A level sequence, it's intrinsically connected to the level you have created with. Remember, together they create your Maya file. So you shouldn't detach them so easily. Once you have a level, then you can start create level sequences which represent your shots. You can have shot 1, but in the same level, you can create another timeline level sequence. You can call it shot 2 and shot 3 and so on. So this is very important to understand. You can have multiple Maya files. They all relate to one individual level. We're not used to that in Maya. That's really strange to understand. And everything you animate in these sequences needs to live into this world. Otherwise, when you open that shot, it will go like, where is that character you're asking me to animate, right? Or that you animated before? I'm looking for it, I don't find it. Exactly like in Maya, when you don't find the reference. Same thing. Now, if you are familiar with Spawnable, you already know in which way this is affecting this conversation. If you don't know what they are, might be a bit too early to drop it in, but I'm happy to later, if we have time, or after the talk, to introduce you to that. So level sequences are incredibly powerful, very customizable. You can put them one inside the other like Chinese boxes, and you can, for instance, drop multiple level sequences one next to each other in a timeline. So what the timeline you see here, that one level sequence, and then inside that, you put this, in this case, purple rectangles. Each of them is a level sequence. Okay, I should play this thing. So each of them, it's a level sequence. So the moment you put multiple timelines, one next to each other, inside a bigger timeline, what you create is just, it's an edit. This is like Premiere, right? But instead of being a file, a movie made of 2D assets, this is 3D files. You can access each one of those going inside. By the way, this is a rip-off of a Miyazaki movie, so as a disclaimer, but it was made for fun. So you see why this is very popular among previs artists, for instance, because you can create these timelines and edit the shots. You can go inside, do tweaking to that shot, go outside, go in another one, keep tweaking. You can tweak the length of the of each shot. It's really powerful, and we definitely are not used to that in Maya. Let's move on. Actually, before I move on, the way of structuring sequences like this, it's called master sequence. So this guy, the main timeline there, it's called master sequence. When you instead decide to put the sequences one on top of each other, then they take the name of subsequences. So in this case, we have put basically multiple timelines, one stacked on top of each other. Why would you want to do that? Well, imagine you have hero characters up there in this sequence. In the one below, you have background characters. In the one below, you have VFX or lighting. So because we said that each sequence is an Unreal asset, and each Unreal asset can be owned by different artists, it means that each one of these timelines can be animated and edited independently by different users, different departments. But all of them, simultaneously, they can see how they're contributing to the creation of the shot. Again, this is something we don't have this way of thinking in Maya. This is exclusively for Unreal. So like I said, when you put sequences like that, those are called subsequences. But it's really important to understand that it's still always the same asset. They take different names based on the use we make of them. It's like when you play Lego, you can build a guy using just the same bricks, and you call maybe a brick you can call the finger, a brick you can call the foot, but it's still the same brick. You just give it the name based on what you're making out of it. But it's all the same asset. You can be very creative in the way you put them inside each other or next to each other. So how do I save in Unreal? Why do we need to explain how to save in Unreal? Is not Ctrl+S enough? It is if you remind yourself what is your Maya file in Unreal. Because if you work in a Unreal project and you think that doing Ctrl+S makes you save everything, it means you're saving the whole project with everyone who's working on it, for everyone. That's not, of course, how it works. So this is very important to understand, and I've seen animators having problems with that because, of course, that's new to us. So you see, each one of these windows here, it's an Unreal asset, a Maya file. So you have to save each one of them if you want to make sure you find the same thing when you reopen it. As an animator, usually we deal with two assets. We have seen that, the level and the level sequence. So always make sure you save those. Of course, Unreal is going to prompt you to save everything that he thinks you are edited. Maybe the list will be longer than you think, because sometimes when you open a window, then he will think you edited it and will ask if you want to save. So always be aware of what we are editing, what it needed to be saved in that case. We don't need to watch this now. I don't want to burn too much time. let's move on here. Okay, so that was the travel guide. I think that's everything you need to know before stepping into the Unreal world, just to prepare yourself mentally as an animator or what you're going to find. I want also to share with you some of the things that you're not going to like about Unreal, so that you know it. I told you, you don't complain when you find them, because we already talked about that. And also how you can deal with those. The first thing, this is not a big deal, but it's still something. We saw before how to set preferences. The bad news is that those preferences, you have to set them every time you create a new project. That's it. They don't get saved in any way. So the good news is that you're not going to create an Unreal project the same way you create a Maya file. So you will probably be stuck with the same project for weeks, if not months. And if you're doing animation tests at home, you can create just one Unreal project. And you can call it sandbox, playground, and you can have all your animation files in there. No problem. You don't need to create a new Unreal project every time you want to do a new animation test. So Gizmos 5.3 versus 5.4. If you launch Unreal, you start Animate, you edit in the curve editor, and then you realize that your Gizmo only have world space and object space, and there is no local or parent space. So this means there is no way for you to identify what those curves are telling you. This Z translation, where is it going? It's not going up in the world like the Gizmo is suggesting. It's not even the local space is matching. You see the X is going diagonal. So that's it. The only way you can have to survive this, it's if your control is oriented like the parent. So you can check the object orientation of your parent, and that will give you the answer. Or if the control is oriented with the world, then it will be easy to understand. Where is the good news here? 5.4 has an experimental plugin, which will very soon, I believe, become default. And I really recommend you use it if you're an animator. And it's called new TRS Gizmos. Once you activated it, you start the engine, and then you go in Preferences, right? And you check the new Gizmos checkbox. This will give you access to new, fresh-looking, way more Maya-friendly Gizmos, and it will include also the parent mode. The good thing is also that you can do indirect manipulation, so you can highlight one of the axes, and the middle mouse drag, you can animate like this. So, like I said, definitely it's going to feel way more Maya related, Maya friendly, this workflow. I'm personally working on a project which is still in 5.3. It's going to last a few months still, but I'm so much looking forward to put my hands on those. So what does this mean? That we can say goodbye to the fourth of the preferences in the video that I showed you at the beginning, because those preferences were related to enabling arc ball rotation and the screen rotation. Now this comes for free with the new Gizmos. So this one goes, and the other one comes in. It's still 4. Orthographic views, you're not going to love them. They're a bit tricky. You cannot move them independently from one another. In Maya, I was used to animate a lot from side view, front view to check my animation. You can do it, sure, but it's a bit less friendly. You don't navigate in the orthographic views the same way you navigate in the other viewport, so it's like a bit mind-boggling. But yeah, that's what it is. Now, the question that I ask myself is, why do we need to get excited when we get new gizmos that are doing simply what other DCCs have been doing for a long time? It's like, why do we need to basically reinvent the wheel? The answer I found for myself is this. Sometimes when you reinvent the wheel, you might just discover some anti-gravitational fields that make the wheel itself redundant. And I think that has happened with Unreal a few times, and I wanted to show you what I think are Unreal superpowers for animators. Let's take a case study of a walk cycle. Usually in animation, you probably know, when you do a walk cycle, you do it in place. And so the feet are sliding backward, the character is there, and then if you want it to move forward, you translate the global control to basically counter-animate the translation of the foot. Right? This is pretty standard procedure. Usually, you know, if it works on a straight line and the ground is flat, it's fine. Probably you can even leave it like that, but most of the time you have to edit it. Very often you use the global control to just send your character around, moving, doing curves and things like that. So your feet will be sliding anyway. You can approximate it as good as you get, but it will come the time where you have to basically remove this animation from the global, and you need your character to be translated forward with all the controls. There is a workflow in Maya, which it's pretty standard, I think, unless something has happened in the past 2 years I'm not aware of, which allows you to basically reinterpret this animation, leaving the global control on the ground and having the character physically translating forward. I will try to explain you how that is done in Maya in the fastest and hopefully clearest way as possible. So bear with me. So what you need to do is this. You create, in this case, 5 locators because you have 5 limbs you want to detach from the influence of the global. You constrain each of these locators to one of the limbs with no offset so that they will match position and orientation. And then you bake them. So what you get is that this constraint will be moving exactly like your controls are doing, following them 100% on each frame. And you will have a key on each frame. Now, done that, you do the other way around. You constrain each of your limbs to these locators. Again, with no offset, both translation and rotation, parent constraint. Now, you won't notice any difference because they are doing exactly, the locators are doing exactly what your controls were already doing. The only difference is because now they are constrained to the locators, you are free to move the global however you want. Or you're free to remove the animation for the global because your character will still keep moving forward because it's driven by the locators. So you can get rid of the animation on the global, and then you can bake now the 5 controls away from the locators, and that will give you back the animation attached on the global, and you can start editing your feet, and everything is going to work as it should. Now, it took me 1 minute, 30 seconds to explain you how it's done. You can trust me that if you do it, it's going to take you way longer. So, how you do that in Unreal? That's the challenge. Now, instead of explaining you how it's done, I'm going to show you how it's done, and we're going to time it. All right? So, here we have our character. You see he's moving forward. He's attached to the global. So, we want to detach now those 5 controls. How we do that? We select the 5 controls. Where's the time code? Okay, I have to time it for you because it's not showing in this clip. Let's go back. Otherwise, why do we do that? Okay, so you've seen this. How we do that? Start. We are selecting the 5 limbs that we want to detach. We go in the space option menu and we put those limbs under world. All right? So now the global is not affecting those controls anymore. Now what we do, we have removed the animation from the global now. We select again the 5 limbs, and we go back under parent. So now those 5 controls are back where they should be. 35 seconds to do it, not to tell you how it's done. So that's, for me, it's a superpower. I had here some use cases of these workflows, but maybe I think we should, let's do just one of them, because I think it's a cool one. Okay, let's say you have a hierarchy like this. You have a parent, a child, and a grandchild, let's call it. Say you are animating, I don't know, a flying whale that goes around in the sky, and that's our green guy, because you have decided to animate the green guy around. Now, you want to start edit the rotation of this guy, but realize that gimbal lock is not being your friend today, and it's just not working because rotation are messing up with each other. So you wish you had actually animated using the blue guy, and then you could have used the green one just to do rotation locally. So what can we do in this case? First thing, we detach it from the word, from the parent. We put it on the word. Second step, we take advantage of the snapper. This is another cool feature. It allows you to match the animation of one object to another, a bit like a constraint, but it's not constraint. It's just matching with keys, right? So you match now the parent with the green guy down there. So they're going to do exactly the same animation. So now you can switch the green guy back under its parent. So he will be, again, still influenced by the parent, but he will have 0 animation on it because the animation is done by the blue guy. So now you're free to do all the animation you want and put extra rotation. I hope the animators manage to follow me. For the others, ask them later. Another superpower, constraints. Constraints can be tricky in Unreal, relatively new, but when they work, they're really powerful. As a Maya animator, the first thing that I loved and was amazed by is the fact that after you constrain something, you can still animate it. So you don't have to build hierarchy of groups to allow yourself to adjust that prop in your hand after you're constrained it. You can just adjust it, place it where you want, and keep animating. Another cool case study is I had animated the balls, and then I realized I wanted to put this lady on a unicycle. So I needed to bring these balls with me. But in Maya, if I constrained animated object to anything, they will lose their animation. Instead, when I did it in Unreal, the animation, even if they were constrained, was kept. It's an option, you can choose. And that allowed me to keep animating the lady and still have the juggling animation in place. Really nice. Proxy controls. Probably you've seen this. Proxy control are non-keyable attributes or controls that allow you to utilize, for instance, multiple pivots on your character and really give you the feeling like you're really dealing with a solid figure in your 3D space. Now, this is the most advanced use probably you can do of them, but I wanted to highlight also the very basic use of it, which resemble a little bit what we have in Maya when we have driven keys, right? Probably you're familiar with that. Driven key allow you, for instance, to create an attribute that can make you do this, right? Or even just this, because it drives multiple joints to easily achieve a specific behavior. Now, what is the problem with driven keys is that when you do this, your controls of the fingers are not being animated. Even if they're following, they still have a value of 0. So what you see in the graph editor is not giving you any information of what actually your hand is doing. And if you have this pose and you've done it with a driven key, and you want to do then this, most likely you're just going to grab the controls of this finger and you will do that. With the result that these controls will be rotated in a negative value. So you lose completely the perception, watching at the graph editor curves, of what your animation is actually doing. For not talking about copy-pasting poses, impossible in that case. So proxy control instead, the non-keyable feature of them, it's really key, because they allow you to do exactly the same thing, control chain of controls, But what gets keyed is actually the control itself. So they're actually moving the controls even if you haven't selected them. And the keys, they will end up on each one of the controls. And you can edit them, and that will be simply taken in consideration by the proxy control when you keep editing in there. So if you reset like a proxy control, you will actually resetting the value of the controls themselves. So on very complex characters, this can allow you to create controls that will help you achieve poses way more easily and more quickly. Here you see a reset. I think here it has resetted the values, and now they're all in default. Here, you can see this is a way more complex control. Oh, look, a flying whale. So we have, in this case, proxy control that select the whole chain of arms. And it's so easy to manipulate, and the keys, they go on the control themselves. The nice things of proxy control is that you can also copy-paste the value. Even if they're not keyable, you can still copy the values of keys on one side and paste them on the proxy control on the other side, and the pasting will go directly on the controls that they're controlling. So really a valuable tool that I recommend you explore. Let's see what we have here. Control rig layering, very quickly. This is another piece of magic, I think, because it allows you to edit mockup data without baking to a control rig. You can add a control rig to this guy. This is the animation sequence that it's reading. But on top of that, you can add a control rig that will affect that animation sequence. But it's not baked. So tomorrow, when you get the solved data from your mockup team, you can replace that animation sequence with a new one, but you won't lose the editing you've done on top of it while waiting for that. So that's, like I said, another superpower. All right. Now we're almost at the end. Our dimension. At Dimension Studio, we give great importance to R&D and developing new tools. I think the strength of softwares and DCCs like Maya and Unreal is that they are highly customizable. I think we can all agree that the best thing that happened to Maya in the past 5 or maybe 10 years has been Animbot, and that is not an Autodesk feature. It comes from the community, it comes from the thinking of people who saw a need and created an answer to that. So I think we have a big responsibility in making Unreal a better place for animation, and we shouldn't always and only rely on Epic Games. They have made it now even more customizable than it was before. So hopefully we're going to see great things in the future. I want now to offer you a sneak peek on a project we are working at Dimension Studio at DNX 360. It's called Dream of the Black Whales. It's a science fiction animated teaser set in the universe of L'Heure Bleue. It's directed by DNX VFX supervisor, award-winning Paul Franklin, and created by Ronnie Abovitz. What you're going to see now is, of course, work in progress. There's a lot of previs in it, layout, temp animation, and some concept study. But yeah, enjoy. Do I need to say that? This has been entirely animated in engine, right? So that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.